Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle from WeAreSC.com. We are, last week I started by saying we're in the dog days of the sports year. And we are kind of, but we have some interesting stuff to talk about. We're about to start spring ball, so we'll continue our preview of that. Before that, let's start where we've had a lot to talk about over the last year and a half. Recruiting. USC just got another commitment. I think it's from a guy who's pretty good. Mark, why don't you start us off? Tell us who committed and what we should know about it.
So his name is Quinton Hail. He's a, wait for it, wide receiver. Um, but he's really good. I had an opportunity to watch him. I've seen his huddle highlights from in high school, but I had a chance to see him up close and personal recently at a 7-on-7 tournament in Las Vegas, the Battle 7-on-7. He's he's a dynamic player. He brings that fire, that passion. He's a very emotional player, but really athletic, fast, twitchy, good hands. He could also play with one hand if necessary. I think he was just awarded the MVP at the LA Open Regional. So, young man, USC is always going to be able to identify wide receivers, and when you can keep the best at home, when they're in your backyard, that's another plus. So you have him. He joins Eli Woodard. You have Letty Vandermaid's kid, Isaiah Vandermaid, already in the fold, and then the first guy in the class, Aaron Washington, the cornerback formerly from Mater Dei, now at IMG. What's interesting, I'm starting to wonder if they're going to try and do everything in-house this year. Everybody's from California because all four of those guys are California kids.
Yeah, Eric, any thoughts on Quinton Hail or recruiting in general?
Yeah, the California angle is interesting. When you have a likely smaller class, you can do that and pick sort of the best ones there. You're still going to run into there's going to be some California kids every year. I want to get out of California, and that's hard to fight when the money is going to be similar when they can go get it somewhere else. Um, so I don't think you should hold USC as Trojan fans. I don't think you should hold them to they didn't get all the top 10 California kids. You're not going to do that. You saw that last year. They did unbelievably in state. You still look at the top 10 and this guy left, this guy left, this guy left. But Hale is he's big, he's strong, he's physical, he's advanced like for his age. The contested catch is really strong, which is something that you have to be able to do in a Lincoln Riley offense. And then we saw Greg Biggins when he talked about his performance at the LA Regional. He floated T-Mac as a not a direct comparison, but anytime you're starting to get Tedrow McMillan's name sort of floated around you as a wide receiver, okay, we'll take it. So yeah, that's one of those guys that you saw really early in this class, and it was, yeah, lock him up, get him into the class. And so you've got a few of those guys now, some more of them out there, but as far as that build for the 27 class, you like where USC is right now.
Greg, it used to be that anytime we'd get a kid commit this early, then the first thing that the fans would want to say is, well, yeah, but he'll probably decommit. It's too early. It's not worth anything. After last year, I'm not sure it makes sense to talk that way anymore, right? I mean, USC did such a good job with with building cohesion with the recruits over the course of the season that it kind of feels like, especially a California kid, you kind of feel like they're going to stick, right? I mean, has USC solved the riddle of the decommitment problem based on what we saw last year?
Well, I think they've addressed it. I mean, I'm all for it. I think if you commit, and then say, well, I'm going to take some more trips too. If I think that Lincoln Riley's done the right thing. I think that the idea is if you commit, you're committed. Otherwise, the word means nothing. And that's the way it had been previously for many players, where you just kind of said, "Oh, you committed? Okay, so let's see what happens when December rolls around. Well, then we'll see." But this idea that if you go take a trip, you know, you're done. So it really tests how badly do you want to be at SC. You want to, and the good news is it came through loud and clear. Uh, SC basically got everything they wanted. The players for this year's class watched what was happening, and they see what happened if you sat there and said, "Okay, I'm going to go somewhere else," and they can see that SC dropped you. And if you really want to go to SC, you don't want to take that chance.
Yeah. Yeah, the piece of the no visit after you commit policy that I didn't understand when it was first announced is just how good USC was going to be at getting these guys together so that they were forming a team when these guys were still in high school. And you saw that last year, right? They were together a lot, they became very close, and they built some camaraderie and loyalty amongst the group. The one thing is that if you're going to tell guys that you can't take a visit after you commit, and if schools are going to pay kids to take visits, and if you have, especially when you have kids who haven't seen much of the rest of the country, and now somebody wants to fly them around and feed them well and put a check in their pocket for traveling, I suspect there are some kids who are going to wait until they're taking some visits to commit, and that's okay. Just remember, USC fans, because a lot of fans get upset and say, "Well, I just want the guys who really want to be Trojans." Well, come on, guys. If you're going to have a policy that says you can't take any trips after you commit, and if people are going to pay you 10 grand to get on an airplane and go eat good food and have your butt kissed for a weekend, it's not crazy for the kid to take that trip. So just understand that that's part of this new policy, and that is that some guys are going to wait, and for reasons that make perfect sense. All right, we're still very early in this cycle, and it's probably not going to be until June or so when things really pick up, is my guess. But USC seems to be in a good position with a lot of guys in this class.
Well, one more thing, since you brought up June, and
Please.
you can go from there. If people, you said things will ramp up, they will, but not in the same vein that everybody's been used to. Those June bash weekends, they're going to be more of 4 guys, 5 guys. It's not going to be 10 of the best guys getting together and saying, all right, let's do this. It's, hey, we want you guys. You want to be here. It's going to be much more refined, is all I'm going to say.
I really like that about this approach. This is going back, way before NIL and back, 20 years or so, where you saw these sort of cattle call junior day visits, right? We're gonna get 400 guys on campus. And it just always felt like, no. Find your 18 in-state guys, bring them in. You're our class. Who's in? And you start building a like that. It's and I'm sure that the contracts and actual, negotiating and going through agents and all that stuff has helped this in a way where you can find out earlier who's truly interested. How do we can we get to step 2, step 3 before we go anywhere with that? And you don't need to waste your time, bringing in 500 kids and that sort of stuff. And you're still going to have the camps where everybody shows up and all that stuff. But it feels so much cleaner, so much more direct, and so much, it makes more of an impact, it feels like, when you do it that way. Hey, here's 5 guys. We want all 5 of you. You can spend all our time with this, and that feels, it feels more professional, and kind of that's where everything is right now with it. So I think that's a real positive sort of development with how they're approaching it.
Yeah, and certainly if your class is going to be half as big this year as last year, then you're going to have less guys that you're targeting. That also means that there are going to be some really good football players that USC would probably ordinarily want, and that the fans really want, that are going to go elsewhere. That's going to happen. So just get ready for it. It doesn't mean, as fans, we always overreact to whatever the news is. We're going to lose some of these guys that you like, guys that you've seen play in high school, guys that probably want to be at USC. They're going to go elsewhere, and it's just going to happen. But that's what happens when you're bringing in a class of, say, 17 or 18 rather than 30 something. Okay. So this past week, we finally got a chance to talk to all the assistant coaches, or not all the assistant coaches, because now there are more assistant coaches than there ever were before, but the bulk of them, and no slight to anybody else, but probably the most important ones. Um, and so last week we started with a preview of the defense, a spring ball preview, and we're going to do a spring ball preview on the offensive side of the ball today. But I figured we might as well just combine that with what we heard from the offensive assistants, and so maybe we'll bring a little bit of organization to it. Let's start with, I want to start with offensive line because I thought there were a couple of interesting pieces there. And so let's talk about what we heard from Zach Hansen, and then let's talk a little bit about where we think that leaves the O line when it comes to spring ball and this coming season. Okay, who wants to start with that? Who wants to start with what we heard from everybody's favorite assistant coach?
I can give a couple. The two things that stood out to me. Well, I should start. The overall thing that stands out about him is that he is still banging the drum for we got to be more physical. Last year, that was a big push for him in the offseason, and he said it specifically about the entire group, specifically about certain guys. I remember kind of, hearing him talk about like Elijah Page is one of those guys. Hey, the next step has got to be that you not purposely hurt guys, but hurt guys out there. Like put them in the ground, under the ground, like we have to figure out as an offensive line how to finish like that. We're not just getting in the way of guys, we're not just blocking guys, we're finishing them into the ground. I think you saw a bit of that last year, but there's still more that they can do. And that was sort of a push. And that's going to be, again, from day one, that was Zach Hansen's push is like, yeah, there's technique, right? Sure. We want to have great technique. We want to do this. Sometimes you just have to line up and put a guy on his back, push him into the ground. So that's still going to be a thing. And then when you the next thing that sort of jumped out to me is the idea that yeah, there's five starters back technically, but maybe not. Like maybe they're not just yeah, there's your spot, right? Page, that would be Elijah Page at left tackle, Tobias Raymond at left guard, Killian O'Connor at center, Alani Noah at right guard, and then Justin Tanu at right tackle. Sure, that feels like all those starters are back. You just roll them out there. Then there's the thought, right? Tobias Raymond is going to take some snaps at center this spring. And Zach, look, not to get ahead of it, Zach Hansen said, like, we're a long way. We're a long way from just, oh, yeah, he's the starter at center. There was an offseason where Jonah Monheim had not played center, but it was very clear he was going to be the starting center. I don't quite get that exact same thing with Tobias Raymond right now, but guys are going to take snaps. Like he's snapped before, this will be something, and you get the feeling they're not going to try it unless they think that they can get something there. So we'll see how that goes. The other thing, not to take all of it, but Kenai Pepe starting at right tackle, if there's a spot where you can kind of make a push as a young, physically able guy. Like of all the incoming offensive linemen, he's the guy physically that looks like he could play right now. That's the spot where I think, again, physically, maybe you could jump the returner at that point. Although, Justin's going to do plenty to try to hang on to that. So I think those are that's the biggest thing is, yeah, all five starters back. Yeah, that was a big priority for USC to bring all those guys, but this spring you're going to take a look at is that the best for the 26 team in terms of everybody that you have and where they could play.
Let's start to break that apart. Greg, let's start with that concept of physicality. The USC coaching staff was talking even last year about how they thought they were in a position where they could move people, and you can see the offensive line recruits, there aren't a lot of 255-pound guys. Well, we hope we can put 30 pounds on them. These guys are huge. They're huge. USC wants to be able to move people. My impression last year is that the offensive line, considering the injuries, considering the youth, sometimes because of those injuries, did a pretty nice job of not having breakdowns, right? They weren't having guys run free, but it wasn't a group that was driving people off the ball. It was a group that knew their assignments and got in the way. Greg, what do you think they have to do to take that next step, to go from guys who understand their assignments and do their assignments and play pretty well most of the time to a group that just pushes people and moves them whether they want to be moved or not?
I think it starts in spring ball, and that you know what, this idea. I mean, I've kind of had enough of it, so I have an axe to grind about it. Uh,
Oh, let's go. Let's hear the axe.
I knew that would get you going.
I didn't know that was coming. I'm surprised. I
Yeah,
want to hear it
who would
though.
have guessed it, right?
No.
They have to hit, and they have to do in practice what is expected in the game. And the idea of we get in the way like a basketball player screening for a guard or something to blow by, that's good for that sport, but it's not good for football. If you're going to hit somebody, you're going to pancake him. That's the goal. You're going to knock him down. You're going to kick his ass, and if he's down, you're going to go right on top of him for a second and third helping. And the teams that we see in the playoffs that get advanced, you see that with their offensive line. I mean, they play violently. Okay. And I think SC talks to play violently, but what they should do, and then perhaps they've already done it, is go back and film of some of the great linemen that they've had in the past. Uh, going back as far as, Ron Yeri, if you want, or Brad Buddy, if you want, or Tony Baselli, et cetera, and show just what an All-American does. The thing is saying we're going to play violent. Okay, we all agree with that, but you actually have to play violent. You can't sit there and say, well, you're knocking anybody down, and it's up. I think that honestly, I think Hanson's a really good coach, and I think that he's going to make a difference. I will say this: I think the player to watch, believe it or not, is freshman Kenya Pepe. I think he is violent. I've watched film of him, and he plays, in a school where they play good teams. Now I know that high school ball, even good teams, is not the same as playing Division I good teams. Like when you go to the Big Ten, you're facing Ohio State type of defense. But you know what? If this guy is going to play that way and he's going to continue, it's going to send a message to the other players, even if they're veterans, that this is violence. I can see Hanson saying, you see what Pepe's doing? That's what I expect the rest of you. Age doesn't matter. And it doesn't. You better just go out there and rip somebody up.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose I don't think there's anything you just said that Zach Hanson would disagree with. I think that it's one thing to know your assignment and do it. It's another thing to play with an anger and put people in the ground. And we'll see. Last year, you were a little bit undersized at center. You were a little bit you were way too young at right tackle, and you had guys coming in and out. I did not expect that group to dominate people the way, the 1979 line might have. But I suspect we'll see improvement there. Now, Mark, my next question is for you, and that is all this talk about, well, we have 5 returning starters, but, every job is up for grabs. Is that true, or is that just coach talk to try to get people working hard? Because I'm willing to bet a significant amount of money that if Elijah Page is healthy, he's going to be starting to left tackle. I don't really think there's competition for that job. What jobs do you think there really is competition for?
So I think the subliminal message, or just the message you were saying without saying it, is we want to be bigger up front, period. That's the bottom line. That's why the name of, we're going to give Tobias Raymond a look at center. We figured out we're going to start Kenai Pepe out at right tackle. Justin isn't a small guy, but he's not as physically developed as Kenai is. That's just a fact. So all of a sudden now, if you're starting to move these chess pieces around, you've got Elijah Page at left tackle. We know he's not going anywhere. That's his position. He will be the starter. But if Tobias is capable of handling the center spot, all of a sudden now you're thinking, who should I put at left guard? Oh, how about that 6'6", 330-pound guy named Hayden Schrader? And now all of a sudden, you've got 6'7", 6'6". Tobias Raymond's what, 6'5". You've got Alani Noah as the smallest guy at right guard at 6'3", 330. And if Kenai Pepe can handle it, either him or Justin at right tackle. So if you're trying to get, as Greg was talking about, and you were talking about putting, and Eric was talking about putting these guys in the ground, finishing the play, on top of being more consistent, the bigger you are, the harder you're going to hit somebody. That's just the law of physics. So if these guys, if they can match up their athleticism with their size, yeah, having 5 returning offensive line starters is a great insurance policy in this situation. In case in case things don't work out the way I'm explaining it right now, what maybe could possibly happen, you could say, all right, well, let's just go back to what we did last year and let's hope everybody just stays healthy this year.
Yeah, look, Kenya Pepe is one of those guys who is so physically developed that you could imagine him stepping in and playing even at tackle, which I think is a little harder position to play than guard, although right tackle may be a little bit easier sometimes. But Justin T had a ton of snaps last year. He's probably going to be more physically developed by the time you get to September. If Pepe beats him out, it's because Pepe's a pretty good player. Because I think that Justin is actually set up to have a pretty good year. You saw the jump that Elijah Page made from his first year as a starter, where he really struggled in some of those games, to last year before he got hurt. It wouldn't surprise me if Justin made a similar jump, but we'll see. It's a big group and it's an athletic group. It is not you don't have a bunch of 330-pound guys who can't move.
It's
John
also,
Robinson, yeah.
look, we have those two guys at right tackle. I don't know if you were going to this, Mark, but Elijah Vicona is not in that conversation that we just had. Certainly for the team, he is, and like he's the biggest one. He's the biggest one, and based on what you saw, like again, it's not a big lumbering oaf out there.
Oh,
Like he can move, and he's been talked about, and this is something that Zach Hansen said specifically about him too. One of those guys that the coaches love based on the questions asked and the work ethic and like how much he already knows about the offense and all of that sort of stuff. I don't know that you have a track record with all of the guys right now to say this is the best offensive line for USC in X number of years. Like we knew that 22 offensive line with all that veteran at the top of the depth chart coming back. We knew that line was going to be pretty good. They had one big question mark with 4 starters back, and then what are you going to do at the last spot? But it feels again when you're not really talking about Elijah Vicona, when Kalon Miller, who is a guy they love, and again smaller, so how does he fit in? But Zach Hansen said about him, I forget that he was a redshirt freshman last year, like still really young, really inexperienced, and sort of what he did, and then the next step forward. It feels like you're in a good spot, and it feels like they're going to be, not that they weren't prepared for all the injuries last year, but more prepared in terms of how many guys are ready to play this year. And I think that's a big thing, right? At center, is Willie Washer the next guy? Like you have 2 injuries to Killian O'Connor in the same year. You have to, not, you don't want to put it out there, but you have to be ready for him to potentially go down again, just because at some point track record is track record, and also just any position on the offensive line, you better be ready to have somebody to go in. And so you want 3 guys at center where you feel comfortable. Yeah, we can put you in there. And so I think that's probably some of the Raymond stuff too, where you got to be able to still operate at a really high level. And center is just a position where we've seen it under Lincoln Riley. You need to be potential team captain type kind of guy to play center for him.
perfect segue. And I think that's another subplot to this spring. And I asked Coach Hansen about, Brett Koleje specifically, what he brings to that room. If there was one position group that I can watch in spring practice and just stay there all day long, it's going to be that, because I guarantee you there are going to be some physical fights. There are going to be words thrown. People are going to be challenged. The competition level has never been um, this good at USC in a long time, specifically in that room. So, Coach Hansen, yeah, he's everything you see. And if that's the case, I don't want to be practicing against that guy, because he's just not a nice person when he gets on the football field. He's a Conrad Dobler type of guy.
And you also have a guy like Aaron Dunn, who
Yeah.
was very highly regarded last year as a tackle prospect, big kid. The coaches seem very high on him. You have um, Vlad the Impaler Diakonov, I hope I said the last name right, who was a revelation at the Army. It's not the Army Bowl anymore, is it? At the All-American Bowl, where he was maybe the best offensive lineman on the field many of those days. And he's a guy who needs to add weight still. He's probably closer to 275 than 315. But I mean, you're looking at a group that has a ton of depth, and you can, at some of these spots, you can say USC has three guys who will probably at some point play in the NFL at that position. And that's the sort of thing you haven't been able to say for a very long time. So whether the same five guys start this coming year or not, I don't know. But you would think that with the group they have, they'll be able to put a really good product on the field, and a nice mix of experienced guys and guys who are just freakishly big and athletic. That's a good spot to be in. That's a spot USC used to be in almost every year. So I feel pretty good about that group. I think you guys do too. Let's talk about quarterback. What did we learn about Jaden Mayava? What did we learn about that position the other day from the assistant coaches? Mark, why don't you start us with that?
I like that Coach Heward said that Jaden is, kind of leading film room sessions. He's getting out on the field with his wide receivers, trying to develop that chemistry. For me, that's a huge leadership thing. I think Jaden has all the physical skills, all the physical tools to get it done. My only concern is, going into this year, he's not going to have a guy like Mekhi Lemon to win those 50-50 balls. Same thing with Jacoby Lane. New kinds, you saw a little bit of that last year, but when your top returner is a true sophomore, and you're moving guys around like Zacharias Williams, he's now moving to the inside, and then you're just bringing in a bunch of dudes in the last two classes, specifically in 2026. I think it's going to be incumbent on Jaden to be able to not, and I know, Eric, you said in Lincoln Riley's offense, you have to be able to make, catches in tight quarters and contested catches. I think you're going to need more of Jaden getting the guys open than the wide receivers bailing Jaden out, as much as we saw over these last couple of years. So as long as he continues to take these leadership steps, I'm good. The next step for him, for me at least, is instead of just we're stacking days, give us a little bit more. Tell us what's actually going on.
Greg, it appeared to me that Jaden Mayava made some pretty big strides last year from his first year where he started, I think, 4 games at USC. It's probably safe to expect a guy like that is going to continue to make strides. He can make all the throws, right? He has great touch, and he made, there were games where he made 3, 4, 5 throws that were NFL throws that really showed his talent. Maybe not Caleb Williams level. Like Caleb Williams would make throws every week that you say, not only are they NFL throws, but I'm not sure Patrick Mahomes makes that throw. He just had that kind of arm talent. Jaden Mayava's not that, but he's a pretty talented kid. What do you think we're likely to see from Jaden? What would you want to see him work on this spring? And what should USC fans expect?
Well, he did improve, in my opinion, from last year. But he still throws interceptions. But quarterbacks throw interceptions. That happens. It's when you throw them and what is the situation. And my thing is, this year especially, he's going to have more on his shoulders than what he's ever had, because the pressure to get in the playoffs, specifically for Lincoln Riley, is mammoth. And can he go out there, he being Mayava, go out there and play Ohio State here and play Oregon here and then go to Indiana, and who knows what the weather will be like there. There's, the way I see it right now, there's about 3 teams that will go to the playoffs from the Big Ten. And it could be a lot of teams after the first couple of teams. And Mayava has to be able to sit there and say, I can win at Wisconsin. Okay. People say, well, Wisconsin wasn't that great last year. Well, okay, fine. But if you've been to Wisconsin and you know what playing at Camp Randall Field can be like if Wisconsin gets into it, there's a lot of challenges. And I tell you, Penn State if they don't have an all white out game that you have seen on TV against USC, it will really surprise me. And I think they'll see. I think Campbell's a tremendous coach, and he brought a lot of players over from where he was, and so they're going to know, what to do. And I think the biggest challenge for me for Mayavi is he emotionally, how tough is he really? I know that he can do it physically. I'd like to see him run the ball more, definitely run the ball more. Uh, because at this point, in order for them to get in the playoffs, they can't hold back on anything. I understand the first 3 or 4 games, at least three, is like, okay, but Fresno will give them a fight. That's just what Fresno does. I mean, SC might, beat them maybe handily in some ways. I don't know if that's going to happen. But I'll tell you, once they start off with Oregon, down here, I mean, all these teams have quarterbacks. We'll see who's the toughest one mentally.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, Eric, if USC is going to make the playoff this year, they're almost certainly going to have to beat at least one of Oregon and Ohio State at home, right? If you lose both those games and you're at Indiana and you're at Penn State and you still have Washington at home, you're not making the playoff. You have to beat at least one of them, and frankly, you might have to beat both to get to 10-2. You might. So the question is Jade Mayava the guy when you're in a dogfight against Ohio State in the fourth quarter and you have that defensive line personnel that Ohio State always has, or that Oregon's going to have with all their guys coming back? Is he the guy that you can count on to go 78 yards, put it in the end zone, and win the game? That's the question for us, right?
Yeah, and 25 Jade Mayava wasn't, and I can't answer yet if 26 is. That's the hope. The hope is that the 24 to 25 growth in a lot of the stuff we saw, which was very real, you get the same thing from 25 to 26, and that's the area where you need it. You can't, I don't think Jade Mayava as the USC quarterback can game manage USC to enough wins this year. He's gonna have to win some games. He's gonna have to win some games. He's gonna have to make throws that lead to touchdowns or are touchdowns and beat these teams. When you add what you're talking about, right? You got to go 75 yards, you got a minute 10, and you have to score a touchdown. You have to win that game. And we've seen some pressure throws from him in those spots kind of spiral out of control and result in interceptions or incompletions. And I think that's the biggest jump that he needs. Well, like when you have a have to, can you get that done? And I'm not saying he's never done it, because I'm sure, we can go back through and, hey, here's a clutch throw and
Illinois
here's some
last
stuff that
year.
he's done. What's that?
Illinois last year, he did it on the road. Defense
Yeah.
just
Yeah, no, he made throw like it wasn't the exact same thing, but there was like an end to half throw against Michigan that leads to a touchdown. Like you had a couple where they put him in those spots. You're gonna need it for full games against, honestly, teams that are better than Illinois last year and better than Michigan last year. So I don't know. We're gonna find out. We're gonna find out because USC is gonna be in those spots where they need it. And I liked, so going back to the thing that stood out with me, I liked what Coach Heard said about, he's got a sense of urgency. And that's where I think you see what Mark's talking about. Like, hey, these aren't my guys, in quote, right? Like they're not the wide receivers who have caught a thousand passes at this level, and I've worked with them my whole career. Like, we got to go right now. We got to get on the same page. We got to put in our hours, our snaps, all of that stuff, and build that up. And we got to get done right now. Like, there's not another off season. This is it to get that done. So it feels like, again, he's got that understanding of where he needs to go and where he needs to end up by the time the snaps count for real in the fall, and we'll find out if they did enough.
Yeah, you're not beating Oregon or Ohio State. You're probably not winning on the road at Indiana unless he is making clutch throws under pressure into tight windows, right? That's just it. Now, he has the arm talent to do that, and quarterbacks tend to make big strides when they have, when they get into their fourth year, right? I mean, he has a lot of snaps under his belt. He has an excellent quarterbacks coach. And I think he's going to have a better running game because that's the other piece of it, right? Jaden has struggled at times. He struggled in the second half against Notre Dame last year. USC just couldn't move the ball to the ground. And you're in a position where you had to score. They're getting pressure on you. You're not in 2nd and 4. You're in 2nd and 11 every series. That's tough. So he's going to need some help. And USC is going to need some help to keep him healthy because the guy who was supposed to be the backup quarterback decided to go be a backup quarterback somewhere else. That's what he effectively decided. And so now USC is relying either on a guy who's been around a long time and is a smart kid, and we're lucky to have him, or a very talented true freshman. Did we learn anything about the backup quarterback spot, Mark, the other day?
No. We're in the same situation we were last year at this point, at the exact same point. We've got a really, really, really talented true freshman who's going to be backing up Jaden Mayava, and you got Sam Heward waiting for that chance to throw a fake punt. That's it. That's the situation at quarterback right now. And there's another walk-on and maybe another one coming. That's what we've learned. We're in the exact same situation as last year without having those two dynamic wide receivers kind of there as moral support insurance policy.
Yeah. Look, Jacoby Lane was at times spectacular. He was not Mekhi Lemon because he was not consistently spectacular, right? He never rose to the level of being Robert Woods late in his career, Mike Williams every game after Kansas State, right? He never rose that level. He was a guy that would make spectacular plays and have great games, but he wasn't necessarily reliable. I think that your starting two wideouts are probably going to be as reliable, if not more reliable, than Jacoby. Although I don't know that they're going to be as spectacular. But you don't have the security blanket of Mekhi Lemon,
or the tight end production.
We're going to see on that. I think Lake McCree was a really good football player.
Yep.
A really good football player, and he was a consistently good football player. He was a good blocker. His pass catching improved dramatically this past year. Let's see what the new guys look like, because the new guys are much better athletes. Much better athletes. Bowman is going to be a better receiver in year one than Lake McCree was last year. He just is. Now, I don't know whether he's going to give you the blocking that you got from Lake McCree. We're going to find out. He was a good blocker in high school, but he was blocking high school guys. He wasn't blocking Ohio State's guys. So we're going to see about that. But in terms of getting downfield, running up the seam and making a catch and being a threat to go 60 with it, Bowman gives you something you didn't have last year at tight end. So we'll see what to make of that. I don't know.
You've got all the different pieces there. You just mentioned Mark Bowman. They brought in Ashcraft from Wisconsin, who could be that poor man's Lake McCree as far as blocking and the physicality. They bring
Talented junior college tight end.
The Josiah Jefferson, the JUCO young man. So you're
There's
right.
Six. I mean, there's six tight ends where you go and you list sort of pros and cons of each one, and you could come. I'm not exaggerating. You could come up with a reason for all six to be your starter this year. Like the coaches are going to have more of an idea about this and that, and that's probably elevating that jump for Walter Matthews potentially. But they love Nello Tupou, right? Like he was a guy that they wanted to play a lot last year whenever he was healthy. They kept him to the 4 game, but Lincoln Riley said, hey, he did things against TCU that we hadn't gotten out of the tight end spot all season. And then Chad Savage spoke really highly of him. So if he's a guy, if you brought Tucker Ashcraft in because he's got a ton of experience in the Big Ten and can do the stuff that you want your tight end to do, obviously the two new guys are going to be in there. Why, you brought them into play really quickly. And Carson Tabrachi is a guy that whenever they've needed to go to someone else, he's been the guy. And then he's back and he's got the most experience in this thing. So It's an interesting position group just in terms of like how does this shake out? Because the upside is extremely high with some guys, and then you've got some guys that feel like more of just high floor guys where if you're talking about like McCree last year, what you knew about him, he's going to be in the right spot and make the right decision on every play. Every play. And so if that's what you need from a tight end, rather than like, hey, there's an explosive one here, then a missed block here, then you didn't get the pass block assignment right. Like that's where that position becomes, I think, really interesting and where you learn a lot about it this spring.
Greg, one thing you've seen in football over the last decade or so is the difference that a real athletic tight end can make, right? You've seen it. USC has seen it from guys at Utah, Penn State, Notre Dame. They've seen tight ends that are a problem for them.
Stanford.
It's been a long, yeah. Well, Stanford too for some years ago. It's been a long time though since USC had a guy at tight end where you thought this guy causes matchup problems for secondaries because linebackers can't run with him. You got to put a defensive back on him, but if you put a defensive back on him, there's a huge size advantage he has, and frankly, that means it's going to help you run the ball because you kind of have to play your nickel defense with Bowman in there. I know I'm assuming a lot from a true freshman, but here's the thing: he is a special athlete. And it's not that hard to go and run routes at tight end as a freshman. It might be hard to block guys you need to block. I'm not going to minimize that. Mark Bowman is going to create matchup problems. Greg, we went a number of years where Lincoln Riley didn't use the tight end very much. What do you think we're going to see from Bowman this year? Is this a guy who's going to catch 40 balls and be a difference maker, or is this a guy who's going to sort of bide his time and maybe do something at some point later?
No, his time is now. He can play. We have seen five stars that can play in college football. And there's nothing that you'd say, well, he needed to prove this or prove that. And I agree with you. We'll see what happens when he blocks Division One 22-year-olds or something like that. I mean, that stands to reason. But I would say this. I think he's going to play a whole hell of a lot. And he should, because I tell you, he is a threat. Anytime he catches the ball, he can take it the distance. He's tough. He played in as arguably as good a high school league as there is in the country. And I think since he's not going to have to beat out McCree, and he's not going to have to beat out the other guy that transferred out. It's wide open, and honestly speaking, they paid him a lot of money to come to USC. And you don't sit there and say, "Well, I paid all this money for a house, and but we're not going to use the air conditioning." And you go, well, "Wait a minute, you're not going to use the air conditioning? Well, it's kind of expensive." Well, wait a minute, that's part of your house. And my feeling is, look, this guy is going to be from the first day in practice a major threat to start. I'm more curious personally about the other guys that are going to work with him because we saw last season, and I give Riley a lot of credit on this. They threw the ball to the tight end. They had two tight ends in there. So I know he'll do it, but they're going to have, if he doesn't have a great season, I don't know whether they can go to the playoffs, to be honest with you, because I think that he's the dynamic one that when you have young wide receivers, he's one that I kind of believe can be a real difference maker.
Yeah, and he's a guy who can, I think the threat of what he can do as a pass catcher is going to open up things for the wide receivers. I'm not saying he's going to be Gronkowski or Kelsey or Kittle, right? But he has the ability to be a guy like that, and that's something.
Yes, he does.
And if you're a defensive coordinator, that's a problem for you. If you're a guy in the secondary, that's a problem for you because this is a guy who, this is not a guy who's going to make 15, 20-yard catches from time to time and get big first downs. He'll do that. He's a guy who can beat you from anywhere on the field. Speaking of being able to beat you from anywhere on the field, we haven't talked about the running backs yet. And look, this is tailback you, and I like some of the young guys on this roster, but that 1-2 punch of Wayman Jordan and King Miller is something I'm definitely looking forward to see. What did we learn about those two guys from the assistant coaches the other day, Mark?
So the first thing that just pops into my head was how Anthony Jones was talking about how King Miller is starting to define his body. He's reshaping his body. He's going to be a bigger back. I don't know if they're going to use him as a bigger back, but not only is he, reshaping his body, you know, combining him with Waymon Jordan, that I think I touched on this in an article. This might be the best running back duo in the conference, top 5 in the country. And then you start comparing it to what USC's had in the past, what those two can do together. I'm pretty excited about the running game. Potential 2,000-yard rushers that, he said, don't say things like that to me because it gets them excited. But you have two guys who are potential 1,000-yard rushers in your backfield. So you're going to get some things. They're not going to get worn down because you don't have to feed the ball to one over the other. I'd love to see some split backfields. I'd love to see power I. I mean, there's so much versatility with those guys. They can catch the ball out of the backfield. So you've got Waymon, who's more of a shifty, cuts on a dime type of guy. You've got King Miller, who give him a crease and he's one cut and he's gone type of guy. I mean, I don't know. It's not quite thunder and lightning, but it's pretty darn close.
Well, I'm not ready to go there yet because though that was the
Hindsight's 2020. I get it, but you can see, you know, King Miller can be that Lendale White type of running back. Waymon Jordan's the get the ball in his hands and just watch exciting things happen type of stuff.
yeah. Well, look, it's an interesting group because Jordan is so elusive,
Yep.
and his ability to cut and make people miss is something. And I think we know what we have from him. He's a super elusive back, and the strange one is King Miller because you kept hearing about these long runs, and then you watch him play, and what's strange about it is he was getting as many long runs as Reggie Bush used to get. He was on a per carry basis, which is crazy. He did not have Reggie Bush's top end speed. He didn't. But there was something about Miller. Miller will find that seam, and there is no hesitation in that dude, right? He finds that seam, and he accelerates better than, right? I think that's part of it. He accelerates in a hurry through the hole. I don't know that he has a fifth gear. I think he tops out at fourth. That's okay. But Eric, what do we think the coaching staff is going to do with these guys? I mean, I've got to assume that they're both going to get a lot of carries. I also have to assume that Wayman's going to be the starter. But what else do we know about this?
Yeah, I'm curious how that goes because I don't. If you're planning for a really long season, right? I mean, that's the hope. I don't know how much you just feed Wayman early and just feed him and feed him and feed him. So I think pretty early on you see a potentially significant split because you have what we learned last year. You have to have Wayman Jordan for some of these teams, right? For Oregon, for Indiana, for Ohio, like you have to have him. He's different. If you forgot what he brings, go back and look at some of his carries. Or there's nobody. Jakeem Stewart, some of those guys, there's nobody on this roster that I'm looking forward to seeing fully healthy more, just in terms of playmaking, explosion, all that, than Wade Jordan. His cutting ability is unreal. Unreal. So from that point of view, like you have to keep him healthy. And I think it becomes a pretty significant one too. And I think Riley Wormley plays a factor early on, and he gives you a little bit different look in terms of a running back, what he can do out of the backfield, and I think is just carrying the ball as well. So I think that early, at least, they go three deep and see everything. But from Wayman, it's when push comes to shove, I think it's going to be his ball. his ball to do a lot with when it gets to these kind of must-win games that you see on there. The most interesting thing for me with King Miller is what did you learn from last year just in terms of can you create your own yardage, right? What does that sort of feel like? Because that's where you really miss with him. Like he felt a little bit like Woody Marks in terms of all the line yards, right? You talk about line yards, running back yards, second level, all that sort of stuff. Like he got everything that was there available to him. He was a little bit better than Woody at creating angles in the second level. That's what led to a lot of those big runs. He wasn't as, when you're talking about Lendell White, like he could just sort of bounce and snake through and get extra yardage all the time when maybe it didn't feel like it was always there for a quote unquote bigger back. And so that's I think the next step for King Miller is can you create those extra yards where maybe it doesn't look like it's there. And again, you're trying to nitpick a walk-on redshirt freshman who was unbelievable last year. Like there's not a lot to just hammer on him with. But if you're a scholarship guy now who's going to be, a number 1A for a team that thinks they can compete for a Big Ten championship, that's the next level for him. And I think it is. I think it is a really strong top two, and you want to see what those guys are like, being able to play off each other through the whole year. 'Cause again, you look back like the Michigan State game was film I looked at sort of recently, and you remember having Eli Sanders and having Waymon Jordan healthy and what those two looked like playing off each other. And it's you wonder how the rest of the season would have gone if you had had all that kind of health at the running back spot.
Greg, it matters when you have a guy who can fix offensive line mistakes because of his elusiveness. He just makes people miss. That's a difference maker, and USC definitely missed him last year. But I'm curious what you think about this number 3 spot. Eric mentioned Riley Wormley, who got some play last year. He's quick and played at played in the Dallas Fort Worth area at a high school that plays at a very high level against very good competition. So he's a guy you'd expect to come in and be able to compete this year. But you also have the Ohio kid, Sean Alston, who is a powerful back, strong kid. Deshaun Rideau, who can fly. I wonder whether one of those guys has a chance to get into that number 3 spot. What do you think?
I think it depends on the situation that they're in. When I look at it, we talked about all these linemen coming back. Well, I think that's a good thing, but they can't be the same offensive line they were last year. They have to improve because if they're good, they will protect USC's running backs up to a point. And if they're going to sit there and say, well, we can dominate against the first 4 teams we play on the schedule, but then when we face the big boys, it's going to be tougher, which it is going to be tougher. There's no question about that. But they're going to have as much to say on how these running backs are protected. And another thing is, and I hate to say it because I know I'll get booed right off the stage here, is what Lincoln Riley wants to call. Is he going to be dedicated to his running game? Is he going to do that? How much is he going to figure out? Because I think that Lincoln Riley's under a lot of pressure this year, especially he's got a returning quarterback, probably won't be there next year, and going to lose some running back. He's got to get this done right offensively and on his running game. And it's, a lot of it's going to depend on that offensive line. I agree with the evaluation by everybody with the running backs. But, I don't think Rideau is going to be ready to go. That's my opinion, based on having watched him play. Alston, okay, he's a physical back. Maybe he has the bigger chance because, Big Ten is a physical conference. So we'll see. But that third spot of running back depends on what they're going to need. And, nobody knows what's going to happen from game to game, especially more concerned about the really big physical games. That's when we're going to see it.
Yeah, look, running back's a position where guys get dinged. So we may have Alston and Rideau playing a bunch this year just because of that. You never know. All right, let's move to the other side of the ball. We talked a lot about it last week, so I don't know that we need to go in depth. I want to ask you about a couple of things that came up with the defensive assistants. I have been preaching concern about the linebacker room for a very long time. And I'm not the only one. The way this coaching staff talks about the linebacker room feels a little bit like the way they talked about the defensive line group last year. Mike Eckler says, Ray Charles can see we have a talented linebacker room here. We've got great size. We've got great speed, athleticism, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's cool. Fortunately, Ray Charles didn't have to watch our run defense last year, because if he did, he probably would be upset that he was able. Guys, I don't know what to make of this, but I'll say this. If you're going to talk like that as a linebacker coach about how great your group is, if you're going to say, as Eckler did, that it's on me, they have all the talent, it's on me. Okay, dude, it's time. Mike Eckler's a good football coach, and I suspect that the combination of Eckler and Gary Patterson will help the linebacker room tremendously. But I got to admit, I have a hard time listening to praise like that about a group who was absolutely freaking lost 90% of the time last year. I just don't get it. Who wants to step up and defend Mike Eckler for my unfair charges?
I'll stand up. I think it's a whole new, and I'm saying this, and of course I haven't seen it, but I believe that they're going to see a whole new system and how they're going to go about their defense. And I think that I really believe in Eckler. I think Eckler probably wants to say something positive because it's going to get back to his kids, and it's going to put them in a positive mind frame. I think that he's going to simplify things. I think the defensive front is really going to be tough, only because I believe that Patterson will not put up with what has happened in the past. And I couldn't agree with all of you anymore when we say talk is cheap. You've got to do it. And I mean, Patterson, no matter what we say, if a guy's going into the Hall of Fame, he's got to be pretty good. And I don't think pretty good means he's going to forget what to do. You can say there's a lot of pressure on, the new defensive line coach at SC. And I think that, that's kind of a good thing for me. I think that, Skyler is going to, the first thing you think about, well, listen, we lost Henderson and everybody loved Henderson. But when you think about this idea that Skyler Jones worked with Henderson with the Rams, he worked at SC, he knows the players. It's not about them getting to know him. He already knows him. He's recruited. Everything is there, except it has to happen in the games. I think it's going to happen in the games because I think things are going to be really different. And if they're not, at some point you got to sit there and say, it's the players. It's the players. But I don't think Patterson and I don't think the coaches are going to allow it to get to that point. Either you're going to play and do what we want, or you're not going to play, and we don't care if one guy stays into the whole game. We're not going to rotate for the sake of making everybody happy and worried about the portal. I feel good about it, actually. I really do.
I like your optimism, Greg. I don't know that I feel good about it yet, but I just feel burned after listening to the defensive line talk last year. And listen, these are different guys, right? Patterson and Eckler were not talking that way last year because they weren't here. Guys, what else did we hear from the defensive assistants that stood out to you? Eric?
Not a ton. Paul Gonzalez talking about sort of what they expect kind of from corners specifically, but also just the Patterson, right? He was given sort of open book about what do you see, right? What are USC fans going to see from a Gary Patterson coached defense? And he talked about a defensive line that plays across the line of scrimmage, good tackling, corner, defensive backs that are going to get their hands on a lot of footballs. He talked about corners, being able to play a lot more with vision on the quarterback, which again should help kind of make breaks and be around the ball and that sort of stuff. Gary Patterson gave his, there's sort of two things that he typically goes to whenever he talks about his defense. And one of the things that stands out a lot is playing with good leverage. And I think a lot of times from USC, either on the ball just in terms of lining up and first steps and all that, but especially once the ball got moving, you saw so many times where USC defensive players, it was leverage on the ball, but it was also tackling leverage. Like there were so many times where they didn't understand where their teammates were and where they were coming from. So you ended up with three guys sort of taking the same line or jumping out of kind of your inside responsibility to get outside. There was already a guy outside, or you're doubling up inside, that sort of thing. And I'm curious kind of how they can teach that out of them and get better results there. But again, a lot of it was, if you're inside the ball, don't let it outside of you. If you're outside the ball, don't let it inside of you. So don't let it cross your face. And then the idea with the safeties of don't go till you know, that was that's always been a big thing for him. And again, where you see, I think Iowa is one of those teams where you get that kind of safety play where they are ready to fill downhill on every rushing attempt. And it gives you this feeling of just how many guys do you have in the box? You got 12 guys somehow in the box because the safeties are always there when it's a run. And the idea sounds great. Now, if you have safeties that can't read it well and can't play it and are, bailing too soon or jumping play action all the time, like that doesn't look great. So I think we're just in a point. I'm at a point where sounds great. Sounds great. We got to see it. We got to see it. And I do think there's reason to trust this group a little bit more just in terms of college, just in terms of they have coached so many college kids. And I thought one of the most interesting things did not come from what anybody said, but in how USC framed some of the official announcement stuff. There were years under Lincoln Riley when you hired an Eric Henderson and when Dantlin came in, Rob Ryan coming in, there was so much emphasis on the NFL background of these guys. They're NFL guys. They've sent guys to the NFL. They've coached guys in the NFL. The NFL guys that they've had are NFL stars. And everything about this group is the number of great college programs that they've coached at, the number of years they've spent in college. And that's, again, Chris, like you've talked about this for years now, where coaching the NFL, coaching the college, it can be two completely different things. And you started to hear Danton Lynn talk about that at the end of last year. This idea that like it's different coaching young college players who show up and don't know the basics, don't know what you expect. By the time you get to the NFL, you know A through Y, and you just have to be taught Z. Like you're teaching A and B to some of these guys, and I think that's what really stands out. Gary Patterson has taught that to hundreds and hundreds of college players. And so if you're talking about a linebacker coach and a defensive coordinator who can look at, and I said this last week too, the when people talk about the linebackers at USC, you look at them run, you look at them hit, you look at them do the physical things, and you go, yeah, I can do something with that guy. And so can they? I don't know. There's a longer track record of them doing it with players like that than we had previously. So if you want to go where Greg always is, which is full scale optimism and everything's great and USC always plays great defense, like he just showed, that's I think where some of this comes from with them. And so that's where you kind of hang your hat on. Okay, you've done it with guys like this before, so we'll see. But the idea, you're still not sitting here right now going, oh yeah, top 15 defense. They got all the pieces are there. Everybody's back. Like that's definitely going to happen. But if you want to find the optimism, that's where I'm getting it from.
I'm getting it
Thank
from
you, Eric.
Greg, the constant sunshine bumper.
Oh, come on, be nice.
Well, I thought it was interesting that, and I think Eric was doing his best Gary Patterson impersonation with that long-winded answer. Was Gary Patterson can be very long-winded, but at the end he'll say, "Our defensive signal is going to be one word, and we're cutting it down to one word." So it's I just thought it was interesting how he explains it to the media. He tells everybody, "Yeah, I could teach this my defense to middle schoolers in 3 days, and these college kids, they're going to learn the defensive signal with one word. We've already cut a couple words out of one, a couple of sequences, yada yada yada." I just found that to be a little bit of irony involved there. And here's the other thing, Coach Eckler. You talked about him. I think he's being honest when he's saying Ray Charles can see it, because he had no problem at all talking about, special teams at his former place of employment. And he literally took Matt Rule and said, "There's the bus, get under it." Yeah, my former head coach, he never even stuck his head into the meetings at special teams. I'm like, oh, wow. He went there on his introductory press conference with the media. So this is a guy who just, I like the fact that he has no filter. I like that. I think we're going to get a lot of good stuff from him. He's high energy. He loves the game. He likes to live on the edge. He talked about, yeah, I like to go 80 miles an hour water skiing. I'm thinking, that's got a death wish on your head, but whatever. If he's the guy who's going to be that spark on the defense and get the linebackers, whether they are as talented as he says they are, if he can light that fuse and make them as talented as he thinks they are, great. I'm good with it.
With Eckler liking to go that fast, he should probably be coaching at Georgia. Eric,
but
you had something to add, I think. Go ahead.
Me? You think I had more to say after my last one? No, that was it. So
Okay, go ahead.
The other thing I like about Gary Patterson is you can ask him a question, but he's going to answer his own question, right? Like he's got kind of the talking points that he wants to push.
In that way.
You can ask him something, but he's going to give you the answer that he wants to give about the question that he wanted to get. So it's kind of funny to listen to him talk and give answers.
Okay, look, guys, we're going to see. The last time we had a defense coordinator tell us he could teach his defense in a couple of days, at the end of year 2, they still didn't know how to keep contained. Or that being said, Gary Patterson is the best defensive coach USC has had since Pete Carroll. He is. Now, I don't know that it will work out. I don't know. Nobody knows yet. But when you talk about a guy who really understands how to coach defense, really understands how to give offensive problems, he's the best since Pete Carroll. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, and we're going to see what happens come September. Well, September 26th, I think, is when we'll see it. Okay. Guys, it's time to continue our off-season all-time USC team draft. Last week, Eric picked Ronnie the GOAT at safety, which means that he is the front runner right now for the title. That being said, we have 4 picks to make today: running back, inside linebacker, wide receiver, and edge. And Eric, running back, you are picking first, my friend. We're going to go in the same order. Just keep going around. You're up. Who's your running back pick?
And I hated this. I hate having the first running back pick. We've done this a few times. Having the first running back pick for USC is awful. It's awful. And I dangled a trade out there to all of you about I wanted I wanted a higher punter pick and a higher corner pick, and nobody responded because nobody wants the first running back pick. Nobody.
I do.
So
I do.
Well, that's
really.
I do.
See, I would say I think I'd be happy with whoever the 4 is, and then I don't have to explain why my number 1 guy's better than who's going 2, 3, and 4, because everyone's gonna have their favorite.
I'm with you. We're gonna have 4 good backs today, I suspect.
Right. So my question ahead of time is: are we picking returners too? I want to know. I want to know the rules, right? I want to know the rules. Are we picking returners at some point too? Are we picking punt and kick returners, or do I have to have someone on my team also return kicks and punts?
No,
we're not. No special teams.
Take the running back. Just pure running back.
I'm gonna take Marcus Allen. I'm gonna take Marcus Allen as my running back.
Okay. He's pretty good. That's not a bad pick.
He's okay.
I had I have the number 2 pick when it comes to running backs, and I'm going to go with OJ. I don't know that you're going to get a better size speed combination than the Juice, and so he is my starting tailback. Next up is Greg. Who's your running back pick, Greg?
Well, it was the one you picked.
I
Thanks a
know.
lot. You knew that. You
Yeah.
knew that was coming. Well, it depends on the offense that they're running. If they're running today's offense, I might have a different idea on it. So I'm just going to look at
They're running some sort of 1930s offense with you, Greg. It's going to be a lot of wing backs
Oh,
and
you're so kind and generous. You must be great at Christmas. Uh, all right, I will say this. If I wanted a big back, definitely Ricky Bell. But
That was your pick, Greg. You don't get to go down the list. Who are you picking?
Mark, count to 3. It'll be all over. All right, so I want to make sure, Eric, you had Marcus, right?
Yep. Marcus and
do.
OJ, the only two that didn't pick.
And Chris had the Juice. God, they're all so good. Part of me says, okay, now then Mark's gonna go. Don't do this again. We already went through it. Uh, I'm gonna go just as a running back in today's system. Reggie Bush.
Also a pretty legitimate pick, I think. And hey, Mark, the
Yeah.
good news is that while you pick last at this particular position, I bet you can still find a good one. Who do you want?
I promise you this running back would do well in any era. Ricky Bell.
Ricky Bell. All right. I like
Okay,
it.
then I'll take Charles White and Reggie Bush on my team. Or sorry, Lendale, Charles White, Lendale White.
There is no wrong answer here.
That's fine. That's fine.
We're moving on to a new position, Eric, and that position is inside linebacker, and you're picking 4th, so we're not going to hear from you for a little while. I picked 1st on this one, which is nice, and I'm going to go with Chris Claiborne.
Why are you doing this to me? Did you were able to see my sheet?
No, I don't need to see your sheet to pick Chris Claiborne, and I'll say that Eric did it to me by picking my favorite football player of all time last week. So it is what it is. All right, so Greg, you're up next. Who's your inside linebacker pick?
No, I would have taken Chris Claiborne. I thought he was the best. I'm going to go, honestly. I mean, if Seau, are we saying he's inside or outside?
He's an edge. He's an edge at USC.
Okay, I just want to make sure on that. Thank you for the clarification. Okay, I'm going to go with Batman.
Okay.
Richard Wood.
Richard Wood. Also a good pick. By the way, guys, I hate to point this out, but I've picked OJ and Chris Claiborne in the last 5 minutes, which makes me think that I'm headed to GM of the year. Okay, I guess it's Mark's turn. Mark, who is your inside linebacker pick?
I'm struggling with this one because there's still some great names left on the board. Just because of what he did, man. Give me Lofa.
Pop it out, Mark. Come
Give
on.
me Lofa.
Get out.
Lofa to Tupu.
Lofa Tatupu. Great
That's a good pick. That's a good pick.
All right, Eric, you still have some good guys on the board. Who do you want?
Yeah, those were the first 3 that I wrote down. So I'm gonna take Adrian Young.
All right.
That's a good one.
That is a good one.
And that means Clay Matthews Jr.
Clay Matthews Jr. was the other guy. Yep.
Yeah, they're on the sideline.
I mean, Ray Maluga is
right.
Just standing around too. Okay, wide receiver is up next. Greg, you get to pick first at wide receiver. I suspect you'll be able to find somebody pretty good with a number 1 pick at that position. Who will it be?
Well, when I looked at all of them, and I've seen all of them, I'm going to go with Keyshawn Johnson.
All right. That's a pretty solid pick. All right, so Mark, you are up. Who are you taking?
You know what? If I have to pick BMW, I'll take BMW.
I hate you right now. I figured that would happen to me because I'm picking so late, but it still makes me unhappy. Eric, who do you want?
Yeah, that this is one of those positions where the top two are the top two, and then at three there's what 15 guys that you could pick from.
There's two
So
Olympic Award winners you can choose from right
yeah,
now.
trying
Yeah.
to pick through all those is like the top pick and running back, where you're leaving so many guys on.
Eric has two Bolitnikoff winners and an NFL Hall of Famer sitting there, and he's trying to make us feel bad for him because he doesn't have a pick. Just say a
I
name.
do. I'm just saying it's hard to split hairs between all those guys. I'm gonna take Marquise Lee as far as USC production. I think this gets sort of underlooked with him. The drop in terms of career receiving yards from Marquise Lee at number one to number two is the same as from number two to outside the top 10 for USC receivers. It's what he did at USC is remarkable.
Yeah, I'm gonna look. Makai Lemon's sitting there, and I want to pick him because he's incredible. But I'm going to go with a guy who played in an earlier era, who didn't put up the same types of numbers, but if he played today, would put up crazy numbers because he was just that good. I'm going to go with Lynn Swan. And when I talk to my when I talk to my when I talk to my good friend Luther Bradley from Notre Dame about USC football, he always brings up Lynn Swan because he said Lynn Swan did things that he thought only God would be able to do. And he has a story he tells about him. Lynn Swan playing today would have 1,500 yards at USC. He didn't have it back at the time, but he's my guy. All right, now, Edge. And Mark, you're up first.
Yeah, I have a choice of 55s here. I flipped a coin. I'm going Willie McGinnis. There's just
In an upset, Willie McGinnis goes before Junior, which means that somebody's going to be pretty happy, I think. Eric, you're up.
Yeah, I'm gonna put Junior Seau and Ronnie Lott on the same team. So
Yeah,
that seems fine.
that doesn't make me real happy, but I understand why you're doing what you're doing. Um, I'm going to go with a guy. I'm going to go with an All-American played under Pete, Kenichi Udeze.
ooh, ooh.
That was a good one.
I like him. Greg, your pick. This is the last pick of the day. Make it memorable.
Uh, well, the defenses are different depending on guys, whether they're running a 52 or a 4-3, whatever. But just for the sake of college football and what I saw based on what he could do, here's a wild one, but I'm going to pick it anyway. I go Tim Rosovich.
Interesting. Okay. Tim Rosovich, brother of what was it? What was his brother's name in Top Gun? Do you remember? Was it Slider? Whatever. Nobody. The people in the comments will know. Eric was too young. He's never seen Top Gun. Okay, guys, that's our four picks for today. Those are in the book. We're getting we're getting the team built out. I feel pretty good about mine, despite the fact that Eric has my two favorite USC football players of all time, which kind of pisses me off a little bit. So, Greg, next time you complain, just remember what Eric did to me. Guys, is there anything else we need to talk about before we sign off?
We got
Spring practice?
official spring ball dates, right? Kicking off March 3rd, going to April 4th. They're cramming a bunch of practices into weeks because they're taking spring break off too. So gonna get it all done. Gonna get it all done in a month. Based on what we've heard, no big spring game again for Lincoln Riley and USC, and we'll see how things go during the spring. But yeah, getting going early, right? We talked about week zero. A week zero game sort of pushes everything forward. So last year they were, what? Last year it was late March when they got
I am
going.
buying that line, Eric. I'm sorry. I don't get the whole they're playing week zero. So we got to give them a break during spring camp. If that was the case, put it all
I
together.
think they did it. I think it's the same. They played week zero in
It just
23,
feels like
right?
a weird load
Same
management
schedule.
type of thing. It just feels
Hey,
like a
Mark,
weird.
guys have to get to Fort Lauderdale. We can't keep them there that week.
Indiana's having a spring game.
Who is?
Indiana.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I guess whatever Indiana does is the right thing. These
Indiana, not to go off on a big thing, but Greg's thing about being physical and hitting and all that, the Kurt Signetti tackling lack thereof in practice and light practices and all of that is fascinating for me because you heard so much for so long. Gotta hit, gotta hit, gotta hit. And they tackle one time in the spring. They tackle in the spring game last year. That was it. That was their only full contact practice all spring. And they won, I think, at least 3 games this past year, maybe more than that.
a few more. Kurt
So
Signetti is
it's interesting.
Kurt Signetti is a stud, and what he did with Indiana may be the greatest resurrection of a football program in college football history. Let's see what happens. They're going to be good. They're going to be good with him. But let's just see what happens. He may have caught lightning in a bottle. I mean, Ed Orgeron had one of the greatest football teams of all time too. We'll see. But Kurt Signetti is good, obviously. Indiana's going to be good. We'll see whether they're as good this year. I hope not, because if they're as good this year and USC has to play there, I'm not looking forward to that game. In November, it'll probably be freaking cold too. That's right. I'll skip it. I'll watch it on TV. You guys can go. Okay, guys, I think that's it for today. Thank you for joining us, everybody. We'll see you next week. Until then, fight on.